Hi everyone, welcome to EndIsEnglishNotes.com, where in this video we're going to look at Act 3 Scene 4 and Act 3 Scene 5. Okay, so Act 3 Scene 4 is in Capulet's house. Capulet and Paris are talking, and Capulet is explaining to Paris about how upset Juliet is over the death of Tybalt and that she will not be able to see him that night. So there's a bit of dramatic irony at play here in that the Capulets believe that Juliet is upset over Tybalt's death when in fact she is upset over the banishment of Romeo. Lady Capulet tells Paris that she will tell Juliet about his visit and will find out tomorrow about her thoughts on getting married to him. Capulet assures Paris that Juliet will do whatever he asks her to do and more, thinks she would never go against him. And again, we know that she would go against him because she got married in secret without his knowledge or without his permission. He tells him that they will plan for a wedding on Thursday. It is currently Monday, so he believed that Wednesday was too soon, so he went for Thursday. 3 days later, 3 days from now. So he's basically going to tell his wife to go tell Juliet that she's getting married in 3 days, whether she likes it or not. Now, this is important when you may be asked in an exam about would you like to live in the world of the text, and this is a perfect example about why you wouldn't. That your parents, and especially your father, would have such an influence. Okay, so we see the Lady Capulet has very little influence on this. So Capulet has enormous power because he is a man. He's the man of the house. He can tell them what he wants them to do. Okay, he decides that because of Tybalt's death, they will not have a big party. So they're just going to have a small party with a couple of people for the wedding. The scene ends with Capulet telling Lady Capulet to get Juliet ready for the wedding. So at no point do you hear Juliet's opinion being important in this, or that will Juliet be happy. He's happy enough to go and do this for her. Okay, so that's the end of Act 3, Scene 4. So we're going to go on to Act 3, Scene 5. Okay? So, morning awakes Romeo and Juliet. So Romeo has spent the night with Juliet, and morning is now upon them. Juliet awakes to find Romeo leaving and pleads with him not to leave, saying that he mistook the sound of the nightingale for the lark, which is the morning bird. Romeo tells her it was the lark and that if he wants to live, he needs to leave as soon as possible. With Juliet still insisting that it's not yet morning, Romeo says that he will stay and risk being captured and being put to death. Juliet, on thinking of the possibility of Romeo dying, tells him to leave as soon as possible while cursing the lark for parting her and her true love. The nurse comes to warn Juliet that her mother is on her way to her bedroom and to be careful. At that, Romeo begins to leave, kissing Juliet for the last time as she says, "Oh, thinkest thou we shall ever meet again?" So she says, "Do you think we'll ever meet again?" By putting that thought out there, I suppose it's hinting that something bad could possibly happen, and again, that's foreshadowing. Okay, you'll also notice that things are starting to speed up. In the last scene, I forgot to mention there, Shakespeare has introduced a new conflict. Paris, the arrangement of a marriage between Paris and Juliet is a further complication, and that complication is there to provide for the loss of the complication of Tybalt. Tybalt was the main antagonist in the story. He was driving the plot forward, and now he's dead. It's a bit like when you watch a box set or a TV show. At the end of a scene, there's a cliffhanger. Within 5 minutes of the next episode, the cliffhanger will be resolved usually, but a new conflict will have arisen. So Act 3, Scene 4 is very much providing a new conflict in the story. It's another angle, it's another problem that has to be overcome. And the fact that Romeo is leaving the room just as Juliet's mother is coming up to tell her about getting married, it adds a certain amount of drama to the proceedings. Okay, Lady Capulet comes to speak to Juliet. Lady Capulet comes into the room and asks Juliet if she's going to cry over her cousin's death, Tybalt, forever. She's basically saying, like, when are you going to stop crying? So lack of emotion here, or I suppose it's frowned upon being overly emotional at this time. She tells Juliet to stop with the mourning and says that it is not the way to behave. Some grief shows much of love, but much of grief shows some want of wit. So basically, a little bit of grief shows that you love them, but too much grief shows that you're possibly not well. Okay, you're a want of wit, so you're not quite with it. Dramatic irony is at play in this scene as Juliet keeps mentioning her great loss which is Romeo, but Lady Capulet thinks that her sadness is to do with Tybalt's death. So the dramatic irony is really at play here, because the audience knows that she's talking about Romeo, and Lady Capulet has no knowledge of her feelings for Romeo and thinks it's Tybalt that she's talking about. Lady Capulet says that the reason that Juliet is so upset is because the villain Romeo is still alive. So that really raises the irony stakes there, because she is upset about Romeo, but in a different way to what she believes. Juliet speaks to the side, saying she wants Romeo pardoned, and then to Lady Capulet that no man could make her grieve like Romeo. So, Lady Capulet's plan for Romeo. Lady Capulet tells Juliet not to cry any longer, as they have a plan to avenge Tybalt's death. They will send a man to Mantua to poison Romeo. Okay, so they're going to seek their revenge on Romeo for killing Tybalt. Juliet tells her mother she wants to mix the poison and deliver it to Romeo herself, and that she wants to take the love she had for her cousin out on Romeo. All her words have double meanings here, and Lady Capulet has no idea of her true feelings. But we in the audience, we know exactly what she means. Lady Capulet then tells Juliet that she has some wonderful news for her. So, what is the good news? Lady Capulet tells Juliet that her father has arranged a day of joy for her to get rid of the sadness. She will go to St. Peter's Church on Thursday, where Paris will be waiting to make her his bride. I pray you tell my father, Madam, I will not marry yet, and when I do, I swear it shall be Romeo whom you know I hate rather than Paris. These are news indeed. So, what Juliet's basically saying here is she's not going to get married. She said she'd rather marry Romeo, who Lady Capulet thinks she hates, than Paris. These are news. She's basically saying that's not good news. Juliet says she would rather marry Romeo. Again, the double meaning. Note how Juliet has changed from an obedient daughter to a rebellious one who disobeys her father. Yeah, so you see a change. If you chart the change of Juliet from the beginning of the play to the end of the play, there's a big change in the way she behaves. And I suppose it represents how humans can change. And I suppose what changed her was love, and her feelings for another person can change the person that you become. Lady Capulet, a little surprised by what Juliet has said, tells Juliet to inform her father herself as he is on his way to her chamber. Again, shows the power of the man in the story. Basically, I'm not happy, but you're going to have to explain this to your father because he's the boss. Capulet's reaction to Juliet's disobedience. Now, this is really important, a big part of the story. Capulet enters criticising Juliet for the crying she has done over Tybalt's death. How now, a conduit girl, what, still in tears, evermore showering. In a series of metaphors, he describes her as a ship on the sea with the tears flowing from her eyes. And it shows the lack of compassion and empathy at this time. So he's basically saying, like, what is the story with the tears? Time to get over it. Time to move on. Capulet then asks about the marriage, and Lady Capulet says she is refusing. She also says she wishes Juliet was dead. I would the fool were married to her grave. Okay, again, the constant mention of death, it's always there, and Juliet's death is mentioned so much. Capulet is astounded and asks, does she realise how unworthy she is to marry such a man as Paris? Unworthy as she is that we have wrought, so worthy a gentleman to be her bride. Okay, so the father of the bride is basically saying, you're not good enough for this man, I've arranged this, you need to do as you're told. Okay, so look at the reaction, look at the anger and aggression that he's showing towards his daughter. But fettle your fine joints against Thursday next, to go with Paris to St. Peter's Church, or I will drag thee on a hurdle thither, out you green sickness carrying. Okay, out you baggage, you tallow face. Look at the way he speaks to her there. He basically says, you'll go to the church next Thursday, or I will drag you there myself. And he starts insulting her then, calling her a carrion, a green sickness, you baggage, you tallow face. So those would have been insults about how she looked at that time. Capulet is telling her that she either goes to church by herself or he will drag her to the church himself. He also insults her in an abusive manner. Juliet pleads with Capulet to listen to her, but he is furious at this point and continues his rant. He continues to call her names and says that either she gets married on Thursday or she will no longer be welcome in his house and that she can die in the street. Okay, so he basically says you either get married or you're completely disowned and you must leave the house and never come back. And you be not hang, beg, starve, die in the streets. So he'd rather see her die in the streets than remain in his house as a disobedient daughter. So she pleads with Lady Capulet. Juliet asks her mother to not send her away and to delay the wedding. "Oh, sweet my mother, cast me not away. Delay this marriage for a month, a week." Lady Capulet is very abrupt with Juliet, telling her she is done with her. "Talk not to me, for I'll not speak a word. Do as thou wilt, for I have done with thee." So basically, I'm done with you. It's over. You do as you're told or you get out. So this is a 13-year-old girl, remember. She's been told she has to marry this man who she's barely met. And this is the reaction when she says no. The nurse tells her that she should marry Paris and forget about Romeo. Juliet pretends to agree with the nurse and tells her she needs to go to Friar Lawrence's cell to confess after disobeying her father. In a soliloquy at the end of the scene, Juliet tells us she is going to the friar's cell in the hope that he has a solution to this problem so that she won't have to marry Paris. So again, Friar Lawrence is the man with a plan. Okay, so that's Act 3, Scene 4 and 5. If you liked the video, please hit like and please subscribe for further videos. Thank you.